Amy Campbell, Fran Duffy, and we are now joined by Eagles preseason analyst Ross Tucker, coming to us from Nashville to talk about some of the offensive prospects in this draft that are super intriguing. And Ross, a guy that a lot of fans are talking about, running back Josh Jacobs from Alabama. Tell us more about this intriguing prospect.
Well, he's the only running back that people think has any chance to go in the first round. It's really an incredible story to think of a guy that was under-recruited from Oklahoma, and yet somehow Alabama gets him, so I don't know how under-recruited he really was. But he burst onto the scene this year. I mean, early on in college football, I don't think a lot of people even knew who he was. You knew about Damian Harris and even Najee Harris at Alabama, and then Josh Jacobs seemingly came out of nowhere. And to me, he's the total package. He's got tremendous change of direction. He runs low to the ground, breaks through tackles. He showed that he can be a big plus in the passing game. And I even saw some blocks from Josh Jacobs where he showed he is not afraid to stick his nose in there. That might be one area in pass protection he could improve a little bit, but overall, really, by far, in my mind, the best running back prospect in this draft, and he really only played this year, so not a lot of tread on the tires. Should be very fresh for whichever team drafts him, and it seems like there's a lot of teams in the 20s in particular that are very interested in Josh's services.
Well, Ross, let's talk about the receiver position, because I find that to be most fascinating, trying to follow the arc in terms of the interest in some of these prospects. And really, the two names that are at the top of this class, it seems like DK Metcalf from Ole Miss and Marquis Brown from Oklahoma. Obviously, two very separate body types. What are your thoughts on both of these guys and where they may end up come Thursday night?
Yeah, I mean, Fran, you mentioned those guys, and for whatever reason, I immediately thought of the movie Twins and Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito for some reason. I mean, it's unbelievable how different those two guys are. Metcalf, I saw where he said recently he doesn't like taking his shirt off. I don't know why. If I looked like him, I would take my shirt off every day, all day. He is a shredded 230 pounds. He actually reminds me a lot, Fran, if you watch him play right now, with the slants, the posts, and the go routes. He reminds me of T.O. He really does. He's that kind of player where it's his sheer physicality that enables him to win. But my preference is Marquis Hollywood Brown. If you look at the NFL, it's becoming more and more about guys in space, speed. You see guys like Antonio Brown's not a big guy. Deshaun Jackson, obviously, not a big guy. Hollywood Brown is that next guy where people just can't keep up with him. He's got some Tyreek Hill-like skills. People call him a Deshaun Jackson clone. He is going to be a big play producer for whoever gets him. I prefer Brown, but honestly, it's like flavors of ice cream. They're two totally different players. It really just depends on what each team would be looking for.
And talking about DK Metcalf there, let's talk about one of his teammates at Ole Miss, A.J. Brown, who I admittedly am totally obsessed with. I started covering him when he was a senior in high school, and I've been following his career ever since. I love this guy. Tell me more about this receiver from Ole Miss, a totally different receiver than DK Metcalf.
He is, and what's interesting is that DK Metcalf has gotten so much of the publicity, and his picture went viral. But there's a lot of people that think A.J. Brown is actually the better wide receiver prospect. He's certainly more versatile. He's played in the slot. He's shown he can play on the outside when Metcalf was hurt. I think he really increased his value by showing that he can do both. A lot of people think as a rookie, he'll be sort of that big slot guy. Think about guys over the years, Marcus Colston, Jordan Matthews, but he's very smooth, and he might not have the raw physical ability of DK Metcalf, but he gets open more. I mean, he separates more because he's a better route runner, which is the position. I mean, wide receiver is getting open and then catching the ball, and A.J. Brown does both of those very consistently.
Well, Ross, let's get to the position that is the most important position on the offensive side of the football. That's the offensive line. I think when you look at this class overall, there's the three names at the top, right? There's Jawan Taylor from Florida, Jonah Williams from Alabama, Andre Dillard from Washington State. Those three guys, I think most think are going to go in the top 15. So we really want to ask you about the guys at the next tier, but that potentially could go off the board in the second half of round one. And I want to start with a guy that's really a man after your own heart, Cody Ford, the right tackle from Oklahoma.
Yeah, I love Cody Ford. I like guys that are physical. Let's be honest, just blocking people, it's not really that fun. I mean, it's only fun if you're really trying to physically punish the guys you are going against, and that is Cody Ford. He's got tremendous size, maybe not great length. He's 6'4", but he has pretty good length of arms. He moves well. He's not the guy that is the fleetest of foot. I think that you'll need to see some improvement from him in terms of one-on-one pass protection. But he actually reminds me a lot of the guys the Eagles have gotten over the years that maybe played college tackle and could probably play NFL tackle, but are better suited perhaps at guard. Guys like Jermaine Mayberry, Sean Andrews, Todd Harrimans, all those guys, the type of guys that played college tackle, moved into guard for the Eagles, but in a pinch, they could bump out. That's Cody Ford. I think the value for Cody Ford is he could be your next guy at both guards and both tackle spots.
Let's keep it with the offensive line because we know that is a position of need every year for every team across the NFL. Let's talk about Garrett Bradbury from NC State, redshirt senior. He's got the experience. How long do you think he's going to last? So Fran talked about that lower tier of round one, but how long do you think he'll be on the board?
I really think he goes in the top 20. And I don't know if it's the Minnesota Vikings or the Carolina Panthers, even though they just signed Matt Paradis in free agency. He is so smooth, so quick. I always like to give some names of current NFL players or former players so people can think of them in their head. Think of Kevin Mawai, Tom Nalen, and even Jason Kelsey, the best center in the NFL. He's that quick. I mean, he went to NC State as a tight end. Then they move him to D-line. Then they move him to the offensive line. And he's able to get around offensive linemen and hook defensive linemen, reach block them like nobody I've seen in a long time. He's so good with his hands, so consistent. He was dominant at the Senior Bowl. I'd be shocked if he doesn't start the opener for whichever team drafts him.
Yeah, and you talk about athleticism along the offensive line. None other, really, I would think you talk about how they did at the Combine. Chris Lindstrom from Boston College was really outstanding out there in Indianapolis. What have you seen from Chris Lindstrom? How do you think he'll make that transition to the NFL?
And I think, Fran, that actually surprised people a little bit. I'm not sure that they thought Lindstrom would do that well in the physical testing numbers. Boston College has produced so many good offensive linemen over the years. There's certain programs, Notre Dame, Wisconsin, Boston College, one of them, where they do a terrific job producing top-flight offensive line talent. Lindstrom's really the next guy. To me, he's a true guard. He's not really a guy at the point of attack that I think is going to give you a lot of movement. He's just kind of solid across the board. Excellent in pass protection. They run the ball so much up there at Boston College. You get a real good feel for stunts and twists and getting up on the second level on the linebacker. So he's the type of pick that I don't think anybody is going to be raving about. And then he'll be your guard for 8 to 10 years, and you'll be very happy that you took him.
Well, we don't have to wait too much longer to see where all these guys actually end up. Ross Tucker from Nashville, thanks so much, and enjoy the draft.
I will. Thanks for having me, Amy. Take care.